staying in the national security space, and my next guest, well, certainly has some experience, particularly in our area of the world. Now, he served in Afghanistan as the operations officer in Kabul, and a little closer to our home, he led 30,000 Marines and sailors in the Asia-Pacific region, so essentially our backyard, from 2015 to 2018. So he knows a thing or two about the threats that we face here. Now, I'm very pleased to say retired Lieutenant General Lawrence Nicholson joins me now. Lieutenant General, thank you so very much for your time. Really appreciate you speaking to us here on Erin. What is your general take on the position that the world finds itself in right now? Are we, as some seem to proclaim, on the edge of World War III, or is that a little excessive?
I hope so. And I can tell you that anyone that's ever been to war, and I'm sure your late father would echo these comments as well, no one who's ever been wants to go back. So I think working the U.S. and Australia and our allies in the region, deterrence has got to be more than a word. It's got to have teeth. And so I would tell you that I think we need to be ruthlessly ready for war. And I think the only way you really prevent a war is to be incredibly ready to a point where your adversary says, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, not today. And I think that's the focus. But back to your question, Erin, 39 years in uniform, and I don't ever remember a scenario as dangerous as the one that we are witnessing today. There's no question about it.
Ruthlessly ready. I really, really like that. We've got, I don't know what the equivalent is in America, but we have the Greens Party here, which started out as environmentalists, but very quickly moved into a million different spaces, none of them overly helpful. We've seen examples of that today specifically. They have a minister for peace and disarmament, not one for defence, which is just so simplistic. I spoke about this at the top of my show already. They fight against any kind of military preparedness because they want peace. They don't seem to understand that the whole point of having a strong military, Lieutenant General, is to deter war. Right. And I think, you need look no further, Erin, than the Cold War. And at some point, I think it was, and yes, we spent a lot of money on defense. And yes, there are always things at home you'd rather spend that money on, right? And certainly that's a big debate going on in our country today is where are those dollars going and what's the benefit, what's the cost return and benefit return on defense. And to me, it's to take a look at how the Cold War ended. I think we just finally exhausted an enemy that never felt that they were ready to challenge the alliance. And I'm very hopeful that we understand that lesson learned. Sometimes lessons learned are sometimes mistakes that we've made in the past. And I think that's often true. But sometimes we kind of got it right, and we just got to remember how we did it. Yeah. So I do fundamentally believe that deterrence you've got to have teeth, and you have to make the enemy blink, and we're not quite at that point yet. No, you are exactly right. Absolutely. Now, who do you see as the biggest threat to our way of life here in Australia? Obviously, the rise of China is, well, to be honest, somewhat terrifying, dependent on what their intentions are, and they've made those pretty clear. Before my dad died, he wrote a book called Danger on Our Doorstep, which is about how he thought China would use the power that it's been building, seemingly while the rest of us sit completely unaware. Where else in the world, in our region specifically, concerns you?
We have something we call the 4+1 here. It's been in a lot of our defense strategy papers, but it's China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and then the +1 is the violent regional extremists, the Al Qaeda's, the ISIS, the proxies, and often supported, of course, by one state. But I think what is probably most interesting right now and a little bit scary is how those 4+1 entities are kind of working together, and you would have to expect that there's a lot. If you think about Russia, Russia is a petro state. It's 80% of their GNP is gas and oil. When the U.S. and much of the world, much of Europe, when the EU stopped buying gas and oil from Russia, they could have been a failed state, but who jumped in? China jumped in. So China jumped in and had the opportunity, and some other countries as well, to be fair. But China jumped in and took, really kept Russia afloat, by buying so much of that gas and oil. So, and then, you're seeing things about in Russia right now, into Ukraine, a lot of Iranian drones, a lot of Iranian missiles, North Korean missiles being used. So you've got this, and the old term, the axis of evil, was kind of trite, but in some ways, you've got these four countries working together, supporting one another, and we've not seen anything like that in some time.
Oh, it's so interesting, isn't it, this space? And I think about even just at a very personal level, when you meet someone and there is someone else that you mutually dislike, there is nothing that bonds two people better together in a stronger way. And the same, I guess, goes for countries as well.